The phone buzzed against the mahogany desk in my home office at exactly 11:47 p.m. I'd been waiting for Elena's call for 3 hours, watching the cursor blink on my computer screen while pretending to review quarterly reports for Walker Print Solutions. My wife hadn't answered any of my calls since 6 o'clock, which wasn't unusual anymore. What was unusual was how my stomach had started churning every time she disappeared these days. Trent? Sorry, honey. Too much work at the office tonight. Elena's voice came through breathless, like she'd been running marathons instead of reviewing marketing contracts. I leaned back in my leather chair, the one she'd bought me for my 45th birthday last month. No problem. Just wanted to make sure you were okay. It's pretty late. I know. This Parker Industries contract is driving everyone crazy. Miles has been here until midnight every night this week trying to get the details right. Miles Parker. The vendor rep with the $1,000 suits and the BMW that cost more than most people's houses. I'd met him twice at company events, watched him work the room like a politician, all white teeth and firm handshakes. Elena always lit up when he walked into a room. Well, don't work too hard, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll probably be asleep when you get home. Actually, I might just crash at the office tonight. There's a couch in the conference room and we need to be here early tomorrow anyway. That's when I heard it. A man's voice in the background, muffled but clear enough. Yeah, let's go for round 5. Elena laughed. Not her polite work laugh, but the one I used to hear when we were dating, when she thought something was genuinely funny, when she was happy. Elena? I said. What? Oh, sorry. Miles was just joking about how many times we've revised this proposal. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. My wife of 12 years was lying to me with the same voice she used to order coffee. Casual, practiced, like she'd done it 100 times before. Sure, I said. Get some rest. Love you, she said, but the words sounded like she was reading them off a script. Love you too. The line went silent. I sat there in the dark office, staring at my phone screen until it went black. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. Elena Walker, Miles Parker, Parker Industries contract. I'd built Walker Print Solutions from nothing over 15 years, turning a small copy shop into the premier specialty printing company in New England. We handled everything from wedding invitations to corporate marketing materials, employing 32 people across 2 locations. I knew how to research, I knew how to dig, and I knew how to find the truth. The first thing I found was Elena's credit card statements. We'd always kept separate accounts for personal expenses, but I had access to everything for tax purposes. 3 charges at Romano's Bistro in the past 2 weeks, all during lunch hours when she claimed to be in client meetings. Romano's was downtown, nowhere near any of our current clients. The second thing I found was her phone records. I managed our family plan through the business account, which meant I could see call logs for all our devices. Elena had been talking to Miles Parker's personal number, not his office line. Conversations that lasted 30, 40, sometimes 60 minutes. Always during business hours when she could claim they were work-related. The third thing I found was a hotel receipt in her email, forwarded from her assistant for expense reporting. The Grandview Hotel, downtown. The same day as one of those long lunch charges at Romano's. Elena had booked a room for client entertainment, but I knew every client we had. None of them needed hotel rooms for entertainment. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen, poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, and sat at the breakfast bar Elena and I had picked out together when we renovated the house 5 years ago. Everything in this place had a story. The subway tile backsplash she'd insisted on. The farmhouse sink I'd thought was too expensive. The kitchen island where we'd eaten countless meals and planned our future. Our future. What a joke. I finished the bourbon and went upstairs to our bedroom. Elena's side of the bed was still made from this morning, pillows perfectly arranged. Her nightstand held a stack of romance novels and a framed photo of us from our wedding day. I was grinning like an idiot in that picture, convinced I'd won the lottery. Elena looked radiant in her white dress, her dark hair swept up, her green eyes sparkling with what I'd thought was love. Maybe it had been love once. Maybe somewhere along the way, between building the business and paying the mortgage and settling into routine, we'd lost each other. Maybe this was my fault as much as hers, or maybe she was just a cheating liar who thought I was too stupid to notice. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice again. Yeah, let's go for round 5. And Elena's laugh. Happy, carefree, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. Just not with me. Romano's Bistro sat on the corner of State and Main, a trendy place with exposed brick walls and overpriced pasta that attracted the downtown business crowd. I'd never eaten there before, but I knew Elena had. 3 times in 2 weeks, according to her credit card statements. I arrived at noon on Thursday, dressed in my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio like I belonged there. The hostess, a young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings, smiled when I approached. Table for one? Actually, I'm meeting someone. Walker? The reservation might be under Elena Walker or Miles Parker. Her face brightened. Oh, you must be Mr. Walker. Your wife and Mr. Parker are already here. Right this way. My stomach dropped, but I followed her through the dining room, weaving between tables filled with lawyers and bankers and marketing executives. She led me to a corner booth where Elena sat across from Miles Parker, both of them leaning forward in intense conversation. Elena saw me first. Her face went white, then red, then settled into a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Trent, what are you doing here? Miles turned around, extending his hand with that practiced politician's grin. Trent Walker, great to see you again. Elena and I were just wrapping up some contract details. I shook his hand, noting how soft his palm was, how his grip lingered just a second too long. Don't let me interrupt. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd grab lunch. Join us, Elena said quickly. We're almost finished anyway. I slid into the booth next to my wife, close enough to smell her perfume, the expensive one she only wore for special occasions. The hostess brought me a menu, and I ordered a sandwich I didn't want while Elena and Miles made small talk about printing specifications and delivery schedules. But I wasn't listening to their words. I was watching their body language. The way Elena's hand rested on the table, fingers positioned so Miles could brush against them when he reached for his water glass. The way he looked at her when she talked, like she was the most fascinating person in the world. The way she laughed at his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. So the timeline works for everyone? Miles asked, pulling out his phone to check his calendar. Absolutely, Elena said. We should have everything finalized by next week. Perfect. Same time tomorrow to review the final details? Elena nodded. I'll make the reservation. Miles stood up, dropped a $50 bill on the table, and shook my hand again. Always a pleasure, Trent. Elena's lucky to have such an understanding husband. Understanding. Right. After he left, Elena and I sat in awkward silence until our server brought the check. Elena paid with her company credit card, the same one she'd used for their previous lunches. Big contract? I asked as we walked to the parking garage. Huge. Biggest thing we've landed all year. Miles really knows his stuff. I'm sure he does. Elena stopped walking and turned to face me. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just agreeing with you. She studied my face for a long moment, looking for something. Suspicion, maybe. Anger. But I'd had years of practice keeping my emotions in check during business negotiations. My expression gave away nothing. I should get back to the office, she said finally. The Parker contract won't manage itself. Of course, I'll see you at home tonight. Actually, I might be late again. You know how these big deals are. I knew exactly how they were. That evening, I called my friend Detective Ray Maloney, who lived 3 houses down from us in Riverside Estates. Ray and I had known each other since college, back when he was studying criminal justice and I was working on my business degree. He'd been a cop for 20 years, the last 5 as a detective with the state police. "Trent, how's the printing business?" "Can't complain. Hey, I've got a hypothetical question for you. Say someone suspected their spouse was having an affair. What would be the best way to prove it?" Ray was quiet for a moment. "This hypothetical person wouldn't be you, would it? Just curious about the process." "Well, hypothetically speaking, the best evidence is usually financial records and digital communications, credit card statements, phone records, emails, text messages. Most people aren't as careful as they think they are." "What about hiring a private investigator?" "Expensive and not always necessary. If someone knows what to look for, they can usually find what they need on their own, hypothetically." "Thanks, Ray. I owe you a beer." "Anytime. And Trent, if this stops being hypothetical, call me. I've seen what these situations can do to good people." After I hung up, I spent the next 3 hours going through every financial record I could access. Elena's credit cards, our joint checking account, her business expense reports. The pattern was clear once I knew what to look for. Lunch meetings with Miles that lasted 3 hours. Hotel rooms booked for client entertainment on days when we had no out-of-town clients. Charges at jewelry stores and boutique shops, always the day before she met with Miles. She was buying new clothes for her dates, using our money to look good for another man. I printed everything out, organized it in chronological order, and locked it in the safe behind my desk. Then I opened a new browser window and started researching divorce attorneys. Elena's best friend, Sarah Morrison, had been part of our social circle since college. She was married to Tom Morrison, who ran a successful accounting firm downtown. We'd been couples friends for over a decade, sharing dinners and vacations and holiday parties. Sarah was Elena's maid of honor at our wedding. Tom was one of my groomsmen. I'd always liked them both, but I knew where their loyalty lay. When Elena and I separated, they'd have to choose sides, and they'd choose her. The test came sooner than I expected. Saturday morning, Sarah called while I was having coffee and reading the newspaper. Elena had left early for a client meeting that I knew was really another date with Miles. "Hey, Trent. Tom and I were thinking about having a barbecue next weekend. Nothing fancy, just burgers and beer. You and Elena free?" "I'll have to check with Elena, but it sounds great." "Perfect. Oh, and Trent? Elena mentioned you've been working a lot lately. Everything okay?" There it was. Elena had already started managing the narrative, painting me as the neglectful husband who was too busy with work to pay attention to his wife, setting up the story that would justify her affair when it inevitably came to light. "Everything's fine," I said. "Business has been good, so we're putting in extra hours to keep up with demand." "That's wonderful. Just make sure you're taking care of your marriage, too. Elena's such a catch. You don't want some other man to sweep her off her feet." The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. I'll keep that in mind. That afternoon, I drove to Morrison's accounting to see Tom. His office was in a converted Victorian house near downtown, all hardwood floors and crown molding. Tom had done well for himself, building a client base of small businesses and wealthy individuals who needed someone they could trust with their finances. "Trent, good to see you, buddy. What brings you by?" Tom Morrison was the kind of guy who still called people buddy without irony. Tall, thin, perpetually optimistic, with the kind of smile that made you want to trust him with your money. He'd been that way since college, always looking for the bright side of every situation. "I wanted to ask you something in confidence," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "If someone suspected their spouse was cheating, what would you recommend they do to protect their assets?" Tom's smile faded. "Jesus, Trent. Are you and Elena having problems?" "It's hypothetical. I'm asking for business reasons. One of my clients is going through a messy divorce, and I want to understand the process." Well, hypothetically, the first step would be to document everything: financial records, property ownership, business interests. Then they'd want to consult with both a divorce attorney and a forensic accountant to make sure all assets are properly valued and protected. What about joint accounts? Tricky territory. Legally, both spouses have equal access to joint accounts, but if one person drains them right before filing for divorce, it doesn't look good to a judge. Better to maintain the status quo until the lawyers get involved. Good to know. Thanks, Tom. Anytime. And Trent, I hope everything works out for your client. I left his office knowing that Tom would call Sarah within an hour, and Sarah would call Elena within an hour after that. By evening, my wife would know I was asking questions about divorce, which was exactly what I wanted. Elena came home at 10 p.m., carrying Chinese takeout and wearing a dress I'd never seen before. She kissed my cheek and started unpacking containers of lo mein and General Tso's chicken. Sorry I'm so late. The Parker meeting ran long, and then I stopped by Sarah's to help her plan the barbecue next weekend. Sarah called this morning. Sounds like fun. She mentioned that. She also said you seemed stressed lately. Are you okay? I looked at my wife, really looked at her. She was still beautiful at 41, with the kind of classic features that aged well. Her dark hair was styled differently than usual, shorter and more sophisticated. Her makeup was perfect, even after a long day. She looked like a woman who was taking care of herself for someone else. I'm fine, just thinking about the future. What about the future? Changes, new directions, you know how it is. Elena studied my face the way she had at the restaurant, looking for clues. Trent, if something's bothering you, we should talk about it. Nothing's bothering me. I'm just tired. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her green eyes. She was trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I suspected. She was calculating her next move. Maybe we should take a vacation, she said. Get away from work for a while. Reconnect. Maybe. We ate dinner in relative silence, making small talk about the weather and weekend plans. Elena went upstairs to shower while I cleaned up the kitchen. When I heard the water running, I checked her purse. Her phone was password protected, but I could see the notification previews on the lock screen. 3 text messages from Miles Parker, all sent within the last hour. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Tonight was perfect. I love you too. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went to my office. I had work to do. The barbecue at the Morrisons' house was everything I'd expected it to be. Awkward small talk, forced laughter, and the kind of tension that comes when everyone knows something is wrong, but nobody wants to address it directly. Elena had spent an hour getting ready, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on a sundress that showed off her figure. She'd been on the phone with Sarah all morning, supposedly discussing menu planning, but I'd caught fragments of their conversation. Words like suspicious and acting strange and maybe you should talk to him. The Morrisons lived in Brookside, an upscale neighborhood about 15 minutes from downtown. Their backyard was perfectly landscaped, with a stone patio and built-in grill that Tom had installed himself. He was proud of that grill, the way men are proud of tools and cars and other things that prove their competence. Trent, grab a beer and tell me what you think of these burgers. I accepted a bottle of craft beer and watched Tom flip patties with the concentration of a surgeon. Sarah and Elena sat at the patio table, heads together in intense conversation. Every few minutes, one of them would glance in my direction. How's business? Tom asked. Good. Really good, actually. We just landed a major contract with Parker Industries. That's great. Elena mentioned something about that. Big deal? The biggest we've ever handled. Elena's been working closely with their rep to make sure everything goes smoothly. Tom nodded, but something in his expression shifted. A flicker of discomfort, like he knew more than he was letting on. She's always been good with clients, he said carefully. The best. Really knows how to build relationships. Another uncomfortable silence. Tom focused on the grill like it required his complete attention. "Tom," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure. If you knew someone was lying to their spouse, would you tell them?" Tom stopped flipping burgers and looked at me directly. "That's a hell of a question, Trent." "I'm serious. What's the right thing to do in that situation?" "I don't know. I guess it would depend on the circumstances, and whether I was sure about what I thought I knew." "What if you were sure?" Tom set down his spatula and turned to face me fully. "Trent, what's this really about?" "I think you know what it's about." We stared at each other for a long moment. Behind us, Sarah and Elena had gone quiet. Their conversation paused as they sensed the tension between Tom and me. "I don't know anything for certain," Tom said finally, "but I've seen things. At Romano's Bistro, at the Grandview Hotel. Sarah has too." "And you didn't think I should know about these things?" "It wasn't our place. We hoped we were wrong. We hoped it would work itself out." "How long?" "A couple of months, maybe longer." I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not just anger at Elena and Miles, but disappointment in people I'd considered friends. People who'd watched my marriage fall apart and said nothing. "You should have told me." "Maybe, but what good would it have done? You would have confronted her, she would have denied it, and then what? At least this way you found out on your own terms." "My own terms? Tom, I've been living a lie for months while you and Sarah watched it happen." "We didn't know what to do," Sarah said, walking over from the table. Elena stayed seated, her face pale. We were hoping it was just a phase, that she'd come to her senses. "A phase?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My wife is having an affair, and you call it a phase?" "Trent, please," Elena said, standing up. "Can we not do this here?" "Where would you like to do it, Elena? At Romano's? At the Grandview Hotel? Or maybe at Miles Parker's apartment?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah gasped. Tom looked like he wanted to disappear. Elena's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, resignation. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough. The question is, how long has it been going on?" "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're sleeping with Miles Parker. You've been lying to me for months. You've been using our money to buy clothes and book hotel rooms for your dates. Did I miss anything?" Elena looked around the patio, at Sarah and Tom, at the neighbors who had started to peek over the fence. This wasn't how she'd wanted this conversation to go. She'd probably imagined sitting me down in private, controlling the narrative, maybe even convincing me that it was somehow my fault. "We should go home," she said. "No. We should finish this conversation. Right here, right now, in front of our friends who've been keeping your secret." "Trent, that's enough," Sarah said. "You're embarrassing everyone." "I'm embarrassing everyone? Sarah, my wife has been cheating on me for months, and you knew about it. You watched me make a fool of myself at dinner parties and social events while she was off screwing another man. And I'm the one who's embarrassing?" "We were trying to protect you," Tom said. "From what? The truth? You weren't protecting me. You were protecting her. You were protecting yourselves. Because telling me would have been uncomfortable, and God knows we can't have uncomfortable conversations." I turned back to Elena. "Is it serious? Are you in love with him?" She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "Yes," she said finally. "I love him." "Then we're done here." I set my beer bottle on the patio table and walked toward the gate. Behind me, I could hear Sarah trying to smooth things over, Tom apologizing, Elena starting to cry. But I didn't look back. I had work to do. Monday morning, I arrived at Walker Print Solutions at 6 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else. I had keys to everything, access to all systems, and a plan that had been forming in my mind since the confrontation at the Morrisons' barbecue. Elena thought she could have her affair and keep her comfortable life. She thought she could use my business, my money, and my reputation to support her relationship with Miles Parker. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The first thing I did was change all the passwords on our company systems: email, accounting software, client databases, vendor portals. Elena's access to everything disappeared with a few keystrokes. Then I called our bank and froze all business credit cards except my own. By the time Elena arrived at 8:30, she was effectively locked out of her own job. "Trent, what's going on? I can't access my email." I looked up from my desk, where I was reviewing the Parker Industries contract. The real one, not whatever fantasy version Elena and Miles had been working on. IT security upgrade. We had some suspicious activity over the weekend. What kind of suspicious activity? Someone was accessing company accounts after hours, downloading financial records, client lists, proprietary information. We're implementing new security protocols while we investigate. Elena's face went pale. "You can't seriously think I don't think anything. I'm just following standard security procedures. You'll have new access credentials by the end of the week." But she wouldn't, because by the end of the week, Elena Walker would no longer be employed by Walker Print Solutions. The second phase of my plan began that afternoon. I called Miles Parker's direct line at Parker Industries. "Miles, it's Trent Walker. I wanted to discuss some concerns about our contract." "Trent, good to hear from you. What kind of concerns?" "Well, I've been reviewing our agreement, and I noticed some irregularities in the billing structure. Nothing major, but our compliance officer flagged it for review." Miles was quiet for a moment. "What kind of irregularities?" "Entertainment expenses that don't align with actual client meetings. Hotel charges that seem excessive for the scope of work. Again, probably just paperwork errors, but we need to document everything properly." "Of course. I'm sure we can clear up any confusion." "I'm sure we can. Oh, and Miles, I should mention that we're implementing new vendor relationship protocols. All future meetings will need to include at least one additional team member from each company, just to ensure transparency." Another pause. "That seems unnecessary." "It's actually becoming standard practice in our industry. Too many conflicts of interest have created liability issues. I'm sure you understand." "Right. Well, I'll review our records and get back to you." "Take your time. We're not in any hurry." I hung up and smiled for the first time in weeks. Miles Parker was about to discover that his cozy relationship with Elena had just become a professional liability. The third phase required help from an old friend. I called Jack Sullivan, who ran a private investigation firm downtown. Jack and I had served together in the Army Reserve, back when we were both young and stupid enough to think military service would look good on our resumes. "Jack, I need a favor. Personal matter." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves cameras and documentation. My wife is having an affair and I need proof for divorce proceedings." "Jesus, Trent. I'm sorry to hear that. Who's the guy?" "Miles Parker. Works for Parker Industries. They've been meeting at Romano's Bistro and the Grandview Hotel." "I know the places. This shouldn't be difficult. How much proof do you need?" "Enough to ensure I keep the business, and she gets nothing." "I can do that. Give me a week." Jack delivered in 3 days, photos of Elena and Miles entering and leaving the hotel together, video of them kissing in the restaurant, audio recordings of their conversations captured with a directional microphone from a nearby table. The audio was the most damning evidence. Elena telling Miles that she was tired of pretending to love me. Miles promising to leave his own wife once the divorce was finalized. Both of them laughing about how oblivious I was, how easy it had been to fool me. "He actually thinks we're working on a real contract," Elena said on one recording, "like I would spend this much time on a printing job." "Poor bastard," Miles replied. "He has no idea what's coming." They were right about one thing. I had no idea what was coming. But they didn't either. Friday afternoon, I called Elena into my office and closed the door. She'd been increasingly agitated all week, frustrated by her lack of system access and my refusal to discuss our personal situation at work. "We need to talk," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Finally. Trent, this has gone on long enough. I know you're upset about Sunday, but we can work through this." I opened the folder containing Jack's photographs and spread them across the desk like a hand of cards. Elena's face went white as she recognized herself and Miles in various compromising positions. "You're right," I said. "We can work through this. Here's how it's going to work." I slid a document across the desk. "Resignation letter, effective immediately. You're also agreeing to forfeit any claim to company assets or future profits." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You've been using company resources to conduct an extramarital affair. You've been falsifying expense reports and misrepresenting business meetings. You've violated your employment contract and your fiduciary duty to the company." "Those are technical violations at best." "Maybe, but the photos and audio recordings will make for interesting evidence in divorce court, and I'm sure Miles's wife would love to hear about his plans to leave her." Elena stared at the resignation letter, her hands shaking slightly. "What do you want?" "I want you to sign the letter. I want you to pack your personal belongings and leave the building. And I want you to disappear from my life as quietly as possible. And if I don't..." I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "Then I make copies of everything and send them to Miles's wife, his boss, and the local newspaper. I file a lawsuit for breach of contract and misappropriation of company funds. I make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of person you are." Elena picked up the pen with trembling fingers and signed her name at the bottom of the letter. "There's one more thing," I said as she stood to leave. "The Parker Industries contract has been terminated. Turns out their representative was engaged in unethical behavior that violated our vendor relationship policies." "You can't do that. It's our biggest deal." "It was never a real deal, Elena. You said so yourself. I have it on tape." She stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how the situation had gotten so far out of her control. 6 months ago, she'd had a husband, a job, a comfortable life, and a secret boyfriend. Now she had nothing. "I'll need time to find somewhere to live," she said quietly. "You have until Sunday. After that, I'm changing the locks." Elena gathered her purse and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "Yes, you did. You meant for it to happen exactly this way. You just didn't expect to get caught." After she left, I called Jack Sullivan. "It's done. Send the final bill to my personal account." "What about the recordings? Want me to destroy them?" "Keep them. I have a feeling I'm not done with Miles Parker yet." That evening, I sat in my empty house with a glass of bourbon and Elena's resignation letter. Outside, it was starting to rain, the kind of steady downpour that makes everything look gray and washed out. But I felt better than I had in months. Elena had made her choice. She'd chosen Miles Parker over our marriage, excitement over stability, lies over truth. And now, she was going to live with the consequences. But Miles Parker thought he was getting away clean. He thought he could seduce my wife, mock me behind my back, and walk away without any consequences. He was wrong about that, too. Miles Parker lived in Harborview Towers, a luxury high-rise downtown with a doorman, valet parking, and the kind of amenities that cost more per month than most people's salaries. I knew this because I'd had Jack Sullivan follow him for a week, documenting his routines and habits. Miles was a creature of routine. Gym at 6 a.m., office by 8, lunch at Romano's 3 times a week, drinks at the Harbor Club on Friday nights. He drove a BMW 7 Series, wore custom suits, and had the kind of confidence that came from never facing real consequences for his actions. That was about to change. I arrived at Harborview Towers at 7 p.m. on Friday, dressed in my best suit and carrying a leather briefcase. The doorman, a middle-aged man with the kind of professional courtesy that came from years of dealing with wealthy residents, nodded politely. Good evening. How can I help you? I'm here to see Miles Parker. Trent Walker, Walker Print Solutions. He's expecting me. The doorman called upstairs, spoke quietly into his headset, then gestured toward the elevator bank. Penthouse level, sir. Mr. Parker will meet you at the elevator. The ride to the top floor gave me time to review my plan one final time. Everything had to be perfect. No mistakes, no loose ends, no evidence that could be traced back to me. Miles was waiting when the elevator doors opened, wearing khakis and a polo shirt, looking relaxed and confident. He probably thought this was a social call, maybe an attempt to salvage our business relationship. Trent, this is a surprise. Come on in. His apartment was everything I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, modern furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable, abstract art that probably cost more than most people's cars. The kind of place designed to impress rather than provide comfort. Nice place, I said, setting my briefcase on his glass coffee table. Thanks. Can I get you a drink? I've got some excellent scotch. I'm good. This won't take long. Miles settled into a leather chair across from me, still smiling but with a hint of wariness in his eyes. What's on your mind? I opened my briefcase and pulled out a manila envelope. I wanted to return something that belongs to you. I slid the envelope across the table. Miles opened it and found copies of all the photos and audio recordings Jack had collected. His face went pale as he realized what he was looking at. Where did you get these? Does it matter? The question is, what are we going to do about them? Miles set the photos down with shaking hands. What do you want? I want you to understand something, Miles. You thought you were playing a game with my marriage. You thought you were smarter than me, that you could take my wife and laugh about it behind my back. You thought there wouldn't be any consequences. Trent, I never meant… Yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. You enjoyed it. The sneaking around, the lies, the feeling of getting away with something. You and Elena thought you were so clever. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm and conversational. But here's what you didn't understand. I built my business by being smarter than my competition. I've been playing games longer than you've been alive, and I always win. What do you want? Miles repeated. I pulled out a second document and placed it on the table. Resignation letter. You're going to quit your job, effective immediately. You're going to tell your boss that you've accepted a position with a company in another state. You're going to disappear from Elena's life and mine. You can't make me quit my job. I'm not making you do anything. I'm giving you a choice. You can quit voluntarily, or I can send copies of these photos and recordings to your wife, your boss, and everyone else in your professional network. Your choice. Miles stared at the resignation letter like it was a final verdict. This is blackmail. No, this is consequences. Blackmail would be if I demanded money. I don't want your money, Miles. I want you gone. And if I refuse? I smiled and pulled out my phone. Then I make a few phone calls, starting with your wife. What's her name again? Jennifer? I'm sure she'd be very interested to hear about your plans to leave her for Elena. Miles's face went gray. You bastard. I'm the bastard? Miles, you seduced my wife, mocked me behind my back, and helped her steal from my company. And I'm the bastard for fighting back? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the harbor where boats bobbed in the evening light. You know what the difference is between you and me, Miles? You thought this was a game. I knew it was war. I turned back to face him. You have 24 hours to submit your resignation. After that, I start making phone calls. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? I don't care. That's your problem now. I packed up my briefcase and headed for the door. Miles sat in his expensive chair, staring at the photos scattered across his expensive table, probably wondering how his perfect life had fallen apart so quickly. Trent, he called as I reached the elevator. I turned back. Elena really did love you, you know, at the beginning. I know, I said, but love wasn't enough for her. She wanted excitement, adventure, something new and dangerous. Well, now she's got it. The elevator doors closed, and I rode down to the lobby feeling lighter than I had in months. Miles Parker would be gone by Monday. Elena was already gone, and I would be free to rebuild my life without their lies and betrayal. Saturday morning, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when my phone rang. Elena's number. "Trent, we need to talk." "No, we don't. Everything that needed to be said has been said." "Miles told me what you did. You can't destroy his life because you're angry with me." "I'm not destroying his life. I'm giving him the same chance he gave me, the chance to start over." "That's not the same thing, and you know it." I walked to the window and looked out at the garden Elena had planted 3 years ago. The roses were blooming, red and white and yellow, beautiful and perfect. She'd spent hours out there, planning and planting and nurturing. It was the one thing about our marriage that had been purely hers. "Elena, do you remember what you said to Miles about me? How I was too stupid to notice what was happening? How easy it was to fool me?" Silence. "I remember every word, every laugh, every joke at my expense. So no, I don't think I'm being unfair to Miles. I think I'm being exactly as fair as he was to me." "What happens now?" "Now you figure out how to build a life without me, and without Miles, apparently. I don't have anywhere to go. You should have thought of that before you decided our marriage wasn't worth preserving." I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the roses swayed in the morning breeze, beautiful and indifferent to the drama playing out inside the house. Sunday evening, I changed the locks. Monday morning, Miles Parker submitted his resignation to Parker Industries. Tuesday, Elena moved in with Sarah Morrison, who was probably already regretting her offer to help. Wednesday, I met with my lawyer to finalize the divorce papers. And Thursday morning, I sat in my office at Walker Print Solutions, reviewing applications for a new marketing director. The business was stronger than ever, with new clients and fresh contracts. The Parker Industries deal had been replaced by 3 smaller but more reliable accounts. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy." I deleted it without responding. Happiness was a luxury I'd given up when I decided to fight back. But satisfaction? Satisfaction I had in abundance. Elena and Miles had played their game and lost. They'd thought they were smarter than me, more sophisticated, more deserving of happiness. They'd thought they could take what they wanted without consequences. They were wrong. I opened my laptop and got back to work. There were contracts to review, clients to serve, employees depending on me for their livelihoods. Real work, meaningful work, the kind of work that built something lasting. Behind me, through the window, I could see the city where I'd lived and worked for 15 years, the place where I'd built my business, my reputation, my life. Elena and Miles were somewhere out there, probably wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly, but I wasn't thinking about them anymore. I was thinking about the future, about new possibilities, new relationships, new chances to build something better than what I'd had before. The game was over. I had won, and winning, I discovered, was better than happiness after all.